BuzzFeed News has released an explosive expose revealing some of the roots behind Breitbart. Now, they've included emails, documents, videos showing that the site has roots in neo-Nazism, white supremacy, and the alt-right. Now, if you have read this expose, there is a ton to unpack. I implore you all to read it very thoroughly. But today we're just gonna break down a few of the main takeaways from this entire article. The first being that Breitbart actively courted and solicited opinions from neo-Nazis and white supremacist leaders for their work and their articles, specifically for one article that was titled "An Establishment Conservative's Guide to the Alt-Right." Now, this piece, co-written by Alum Bakari and Milo Yiannopoulos, starts off some, mostly establishment types, insist it's little more than a vehicle for the worst dregs of human society, talking about the alt-right, anti-Semites, white supremacists, and other members of the Stormfront set. They're wrong. But BuzzFeed showed us that Milo, prior to writing the article, reached out to the system administrator for the neo-Nazi website, The Daily Stormer, Andrew Weave Onnerheimer, editor of the white nationalist magazine American Renaissance, Devin Saucier, and neo-reactionary Curtis Yarvin to solicit ideas. So the BuzzFeed article shows this email thread of Milo saying, "Hey, I'm writing this article on the alt-right. I'm sure you're gonna wanna have a say in it," to all of these like neo-Nazis and white supremacists. So that was one main takeaway. Were you guys surprised by that?
No.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, the things in this article are like bombastic, but like not surprising.
Well, I think the important thing is that guys like Milo and Gavin McInnes and these guys that are, that we would consider like basically guys on the alt-right, they make the distinction. They've always said that they're not alt-right, that they're alt-light, and that we don't associate with those crazy Nazi, racists that are on like the sort of hard right.
Yeah.
But this article clearly shows that they not only associate with them, but they actively solicit their advice on stories and are basically just using their own platform to try to make their hard right, like white supremacist views, a little bit more palatable for your kind of typical conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the stuff you could do technologically also. Like they're doing everything in their power to galvanize, build an audience. And so you can do that. Ways you can do that is to call the audience you want and ask them what they want. I'm sure they're also looking at the different permutations of headline strategy and story selection and see what gets the most clicks from the same people over and over again.
Yeah.
The people that come back the most, and you can absolutely, tailor your strategy in accordance with what you learn.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. Like a lot of it that is revealed in this article goes into their strategy. And back to what Nando said, it's like a lot of it is rebranding, right? They're trying to rebrand like neo-Nazism, white supremacy. And oftentimes you can see through these email threads that they had to like call each other out, being like, "Ooh, that's a little off-brown. That's a little too transparent for the ideals that we're trying to perpetuate." Like when Milo had to be told not to host racists on his podcast. So he wanted to have a neo-Nazi hacker, Weave Arnheimer, on his podcast. He said, "Great provocative guest. He's one of the funniest, smartest, and most interesting people I know. Very on brand for me." And then he got a response saying, "Hey, gotta think about it. He's a legit racist. This is a major strategic decision for this company, and as of now, I'm leaning against it." Now, when we're talking about legit racists, you would be surprised that you can find out who's a legit racist by looking at their passwords. Now, Milo used legit racist passwords, and that had blatantly anti-Semitic intonations to them. Like in April 6th email, you can see that Alum Bakari mentioned having had access to an account of Yiannopoulos's with a password that began with the word crystal, obviously an allusion to Kristallnacht from the 1938 riot against German Jews. Another email thread from June 2016 to an assistant Yiannopoulos shared the password to his email, which began long knives 1290, the night of the long knives, obviously, and 1290 is the year that King Edward I expelled the Jews from England. So
it's good. It's all very good.
Because
it's all very good.
Until now,
password 123 was taken. So you wanted to get a little creative.
Yeah.
they had hidden behind such simple strategies as like, well, we're not racist, we have a Muslim writer.
Yeah.
We're not anti-Muslim.
Milo's Jewish.
Milo is of Jewish descent.
Yeah.
So I was on a panel with Joel Pollack, who's one of the main writers for Breitbart. Oh, we were both on
that same panel.
Yeah.
Thanks for remembering.
I called it out. Yeah. So when people called him out for sort of the just bigotry that Breitbart spews, his sort of like reflex response was, well, like, I'm a Jew.
He was wearing a yarmulke on the panel.
We have Jew writers, and it's like, okay, like, cool. Just because you're Jew doesn't make you not a racist.
I mean, to be clear,
you know what I mean?
This dude Weave that Milo wanted to have on his podcast works for the Daily Stormer, which is like the neo-Nazi site.
Right,
like,
right.
The Struma was the name of the periodical in Nazi Germany, The Storm.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, the guy, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart, this guy Alex Marlow, comes off as like this like sad, pathetic dude in the piece where he's just like kind of overwhelmed by all these like, crazy requests to have like, explicitly anti-Semitic articles. He's like, whoa, we can't do that. That's like explicitly anti-Semitic.
Well,
you can't. He's like, I cannot okay
it's a gas chamber.
Gas chamber.
He's
tweets.
like, no gas chamber jokes. We can have some like Nazi jokes, but no gas chamber jokes. So they drew the line there.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nazis, there's been some karaoke footage of Milo that has been released that I'd like to show you guys, because in it you can see that some of the onlookers include Richard Spencer and some other Milo fans.
Friend of the show, Dick Spence.
Take a look at this footage of Milo singing "America the Beautiful."
God shed His grace on me, and round my good wind brotherhood caused me to shine.
All right, so you can see that the onlookers are giving the Nazi salute. Now, Milo says that he added that he has severe myopia, so severe nearsightedness. So it was impossible for him to see the Hitler salute 50 feet away. Unfortunately for Milo, a video is worth 1,000 words. Take a look at this next part of the video.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we're laughing at this because it is so ridiculous and so absurd in the ways that they have tried to rebrand rebrand Nazism, rebrand white supremacy, rebrand like the KKK to be like cool and alternative or whatever. We're laughing because it's so ridiculous and so transparent. Yeah, essentially. But it's not funny because they basically, got moved like a large portion of our country and brainwash them into believing some of the things that they believe now, just sort of behind this cool terminology.
Well, not just that, but I think that the really interesting thing in the article, I mean, okay, shocker, Milo's a disgusting racist, right? But the real interesting thing that I thought in the article was that like there was many sort of people who were secretly fans of Breitbart and feeding them kind of story ideas that were in mainstream outlets or in even liberal outlets. Like there was a.
Let's get into that, like, because I have a graphic for that.
I'm jumping ahead.
I do think I'll let your
sorry.
No, I do think I agree with you. That was like the sort of the biggest mind of all of this, right? Because there's a lot of these like quote unquote liberals working for liberal outlets that basically gave Milo tips, including Mitchell Sunderland, who's a senior staff writer for Vice's women's channel Broadly, who asked Yiannopoulos to mock New York Times columnist Lindy West, whom he called a fat feminist. David Auerbach, who is a former tech reporter for Slate, he passed along background information about the love life of Anita Sarkeesian during the Gamergate target. And there was a whole host of people and writers and people who work in Hollywood who were basically passing along information. People within Google, people at Hollywood, people who worked for E, who passed along this information of seemingly things that were too PC within their organizations, and then had Milo write about them.
That's the thing, and it's an important distinction. Just because journalists have a line of communication with terrible people does not make them terrorists. They're terrible. Like, I mean, a lot of the best journalism ever done is journalists sitting down with whack jobs and shitbirds.
Right.
But
this is not what was going
this
on.
is not what was happening.
Yeah.
This is them saying like, you should write about this, Milo, like me. And I think both sections of this bleed together in this dynamic of what some might call locker room talk, but others might look at and say like, this is severe, terrible, acidic racism of people like Milo who are in his karaoke performance with other people who don't know, they think they're comedians, they think they're funny, that they don't know how to get people to like them or laugh at them. They just think to give them the ultimate benefit of the doubt, they think by saying the universally worst seeming thing that they get a pass because it's a joke. And mix that with people who aren't doing that, people who are genuinely terrible racists, and you get another level to the echo chamber of people reinforcing. And you read it, there's writing about it, a lot of folks don't know the difference, and then there's just twice as many bastards out there that are working together.
Yeah, there's definitely like the jokey aspect of it, right? And so that's Milo's claim when he writes, these things about birth control and feminism is a cancer. He says that he's just trying to be inflammatory and get a response. But then when you look at some of the emails, especially between him and Bannon sort of like threatening him, putting him in his place, saying that he needs to, really stir up drama. All of his emails end in #war. There's evidence that
can we talk about Bannon's email style? I mean, he emails like a 13-year-old girl on AIM.
He does.
It was like
AIM reference.
Yeah, I mean that's like that was like one of the more shocking revelations of this thing.
Yeah, he does use the U instead of YO.
Yeah, and R instead of R.
Yes, but I mean that's the thing but despite that, he does keep up communication with Milo when he goes into the White House. Milo talks about evidence that Trump used some of Milo's quotes and some of the things that he has said before in speeches. So there's a clear direct line of communication there, which should terrify us all. I mean, I think like we can laugh at some of these things and we can be like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. But these are people who truly and firmly believe this and want to change the country. And they commend each other on talking about European roots and getting back to our Western civilization. We need somebody on the Western war front and all of this crazy, ludicrous things. And it's serious, and they're serious. They want this war and they want to make this country like completely white.
TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.